Hello everyone, Jim here with Sunrise Farm. Welcome back to the farm. In today's episode, we're going to talk about seed starting. I am in the first week of January. It is January 4th, 2024. And what you can see right here is just some of the prep work I'm doing to start some seeds. I'm starting some peppers and some tomatoes and celery and a few herbs to go along with those. I actually started yesterday, but it was so nasty and rainy and overcast. It wasn't really a good day to film, so I'm going to show you what I've already done and kind of give you a quick explanation of where these things are going and why I'm doing them, why I'm starting them in January. I live in South Carolina, the lower part of South Carolina, so Zone 8B. Some of this stuff can be adjusted for your particular zoning and temperature range. Today, right now, it's about 59 degrees. It's about, I don't know, it's about mid-afternoon, something like that. And it's just a great day to work outside, great day to get into some gardening, as we got another couple of months to go before we get into full swing of things down here. So now's a great time to get your seeds started if that's, if it's applicable to you. So let me bring you in a little closer and show you what's going on. All right, so let me start off by showing you, in some of my previous videos, you would know that I tend to use these PropTech trays. I got these from hosstools.com. This is a 162 cell tray, but as you can see with this tray right here, this tray is a 128 cell tray, but this tray is your typical 10 by 20 standard pattern as far as trays go. And you can see how much smaller or how much bigger the PropTech tray is in conjunction with this tray. Now this tray is brand new to me. I just picked up a batch of these from NeverSink Tools, so neversinctools.com, because I wanted to try them out. Now the main significant difference besides the overall size, now these will fit in your 1020 bottom trays or another 1020 style trays if you have like a humidity dome. These, however, will not. You have to buy special bottom trays for these for their size, unless you have something else to put them in. These are called wind strip trays. That's W-I-N strip, wind strip trays. And the reason they call them that is, if you turn it over, you can see on the bottom it's got pretty significant size holes. But I don't even know that I can get in there and show you. But if I could get into, there we go. Right there you can see that the light coming through. Inside each one of the cells there's a side slit to allow air movement. And as you can see, these little holes just go straight through, which is where those slits are, so the air can get in around each one of the cells to allow for air pruning. So we're going to try these out. I've never tried these before yet, and I just received them. So we're going to give them a try, and then I'll do a comparison video at some point in the near future just to give you the pros and cons. Clearly the size is one thing. Now I will say right off the bat, these are considerably cheaper. For a batch of 10 is $100. For a batch of 5, it's $140. So a little bit difference. Of course, you don't necessarily need something like this if you're just doing a few plants in your backyard. But if you're doing any type of real planting or multiple sowings of things, or going to start all your seeds in trays, I highly recommend these. Both of them are made of the same type of plastic. Both of them are extremely durable. They'll probably be lifetime trays for you, unless you really do something detrimental, like run over them with a car or something. But they should be lifetime for you. Now, the PropTech trays are very similar made. Now, they don't have the slits in them, but what they do have, and this one's going to be real hard for me to show you. You probably can't see it very well, but right inside all four sides of each cell, there are these grooves. These are called root training grooves. And the cells themselves go in at a slight angle. So each cell is beveled from top to bottom, and each cell has 4 sides of root training grooves. I have really loved these. So to me, they're well worth the money. And 162 plants in this particular model, you can get them in 128. I think you can get them in 332 or 338, something like that. I'd have to look. But there's a big difference in trying to do seed starts in these versus these, just in, as you can see, in size. They do make these smaller and bigger. One of the things I actually like that I bought, I don't have one out to show you right a second, but I actually bought the 50 cell version of this, which is really good for starting things like cucumbers and squashes, because the cells are much bigger, because those roots will grow much faster. So, but let me just show you what I've already done. So here is one of those 128 never sink tool trays, seed starting trays, and I've merely put it in just your standard old typical plastic 10-20 tray as a bottom tray. And that makes it easier to carry around. Plus I'm moving them inside to water them. I have a little pump house that I'm using inside with a heater so I can water and germinate them. As you can see here, I have a couple of the 162 cell trays, my PropTech trays, already done with seed starting mix. A little later on in the season, in the early spring season, I'll go through my seed starting method, because I actually make my own seed starting mix. Again, if you're only doing a couple of plants in your backyard, small garden, raised bed, and you want to buy a bag of seed starting mix, I'd highly recommend it. But for as much planting as I do, I need to be more profitable and have more bulk, so I go ahead and make my own. All right, so what I have here is I have another one of my 162 cell trays. I had already, like I said, I prepped these yesterday, started watering them in. In fact, if you've ever used a seed starting tray and you put dry mix in and then you need to water it down before you actually put your seeds in it, so when you water it down, if you've ever noticed, the water actually seems to not even drain at all, it just bubbles up on top. That's because it's a thing called hydrophobic. I'm dividing this tray in half, so that's 81 on one side and 81 of another. In this case, it's 81 of Amish paste tomatoes. And I've already put these seeds in, and I'll get you a little closer view in a second. And this side, I'm going to plant jalapeno peppers. I typically will be planting out in my garden probably about 50 to 60 plants, and the rest I'm just going to have to make sure I have enough germination, but also I'm going to be selling a little some seedling plants in my market farm. So let me just show you real quick what I've done. It's hard to see because they're already down in there, but right there, these already have the tomato seeds in them. Now you'll notice that they're not covered with anything yet, and you don't necessarily even have to, so let me explain. By the way, if you're doing this, a chopstick is a good tool if you want to create divots or dimples. This is nothing more than a board. I just use it so I can divide the tray in half and I don't cross-contaminate my seeds. So that's leaving 9 cells, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 cells on this side. It might be hard to tell with the shot, but I have done absolutely nothing to this side yet. No dimples, no anything. And no, when you put the seed starting mix in a tray, don't make the mistake of compressing it in. You want to basically fill them and then water them in thoroughly. It may sink a little bit and you may want to add just a touch of mix, but don't pack it in there because you want the roots to be able to grow and expand, and the roots is what will bind the dirt. So don't try to compress the dirt down in there too hard. You can do it a little bit, but don't try to force it down in there. So I just have some leftover jalapeno seeds from last year. I also saved some if I don't have enough, but this package had a lot in it to start with. This is an heirloom variety. I tend to use, I won't say exclusively, but most things I plant are heirlooms so that I can save the seeds. Now I just use a little paper bowl, dump the seeds out in a bowl so it makes it easier to get at. And I use a pair of tweezers. Now, there's a couple of methods to doing this. Yes, you can grab them with the tweezers. That's pretty convenient. But if your seed starting mix is good and moist, you can actually just take it and rub it against the moist dirt. All right. And right there, the seed will stick to it. Okay? And then all you got to do is just basically do a small wiping motion and put it down in the cell. Now again, I told you I didn't put any divots, so I'm just setting these seeds on top. But I'll show you what I'm going to do next. Oop. See if I can hang on to it. Now I'm basically going to put just one seed per cell when it comes to this type of plant. And then I'll go back and maybe pop a couple of double seeds. I'm already planting more than I technically need for my market, my farm market, my space that I've got for my garden. But I definitely want to make sure I've got enough not to have a problem. It's easier to either sell a couple of plants, give them away, or if you absolutely had to, just discard them. But better to have more than not enough. Now, if you watch one of my previous videos about planting in January, for my zone at any rate, you might wonder why I'm doing it so early, because I can't plant these outside until basically right around April 1st. My last frost date is March 27th. But I'm going to be up potting these. Peppers and tomatoes especially are one of those plants. You don't have to, but they're one of those plants that if you do some forethought of how, the timing of your season and where you're going to put them and give them a better head start. Peppers and tomatoes are the two of the things that are just things you want to pot up. So I'm going to take them when they've grown in here, say about 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks, somewhere in that range. I'm going to take them from here and I'm going to up pot them into 4-inch pots. And then most of them, I'm going to up pot them again before I put them in my garden into 1-gallon pots. Yes, that's a fair bit of work. No, you don't have to. But I want the plants to be as big, as strong, as healthy, and in advance as I can kind of make them. And you can see I'm not doing anything other than just keeping every now and again I'm just wiping the side of the tweezers off and just touching a seed. Another reason for kind of putting a couple of seeds in a hole is you never know what seeds, you're not going to get 100% germination out of your seeds. So you never know how many of the seeds are viable in the first place, especially if you're using older seeds. Now what you don't want to do trying this, since I am making the tweezers damp, is you don't want to touch all kinds of seeds. You don't want to get your other seeds that you may not be using wet. If you get the seeds wet, then they're pretty much done. Double check myself that I got one in every one of them. Looks pretty good. Now let me show you. Let me put these seeds up real quick and let me show you what I do from there. I mean, I just squeeze, because it's a paper bowl, I just squeeze it and just put the seeds right back. I also use a paper clip on my seeds. I don't want them to pop open accidentally. Let me just set this off to the side. All right, this seed is right there. See the kind of white dot? This is a Sharpie marker, just a standard old Sharpie marker. I'm using the butt end of the Sharpie. I am merely in a twisting motion, because if your Sharpie gets wet and you grab the seed, it has a tendency to be on the Sharpie. But if you just take it in a twisting motion and just slightly push in to make good contact. So that's all we want to do here, is just slightly twist and firm in. We're not trying to cram it down in there. We're just twisting it and firming it in. Now clearly, planting something like these tomatoes and peppers, the seeds are pretty easy to handle. They're good and dried out in the pack. They're very easy to pick up and deal with. Now, I will say I planted celery, a full tray of celery yesterday, and whew, boy oh boy, them seeds are huge. They're the tiniest seeds I've ever seen in my life. They can be quite the aggravation dealing with those. But like I said, I planted a whole, in actuality I planted a tray and a half's worth, so I planted 200 celery seeds yesterday. They take forever to germinate anyway, up to 12 weeks. And yeah, so we'll see what happens there. Now my seed starting mix, which is, typical of most seed starting mixes, whether you make yours or buy it, is a component of peat moss, composted cow manure, and perlite. There you go. I've merely just, like I said, I just took this, and that's all I did. You can even see by the marker. Oop, let me refocus for you. You can even see by the marker, it's not like I was pressing deep in there. About 1/4 of an inch. Just making good soil contact with the seeds. Now you can see the seeds, right? And you see those little creamy white, yellowish looking aspects, those seeds. All right, so let me talk just a minute about what to do next. You'll see quite often people will cover this with just a little bit of seed starting mix, potting soil, dirt, what have you. Perfectly fine, you can do that. You've also seen, and I do it as well, depending on the circumstances, but I'll cover it with perlite to allow more water flow and airflow through it. But I'm actually going to tell you that you don't need to cover them at all. And I'm going to leave this tray just like that, just like I showed you. I'm not going to put anything on top of these seeds. As long as you've got them into good, in fact, I see I missed one, but as long as you've got them into good soil contact and you keep this tray moist, not flooded, but you keep it nice and moist, they will do just fine. There are some particular seeds, celery to a degree, it can kind of go intermediate, dill, that need light to germinate, but the vast majority prefer darkness to germinate. So if you have whatever germination chamber, whether you're doing this in a greenhouse and it's just that germination is at nighttime because you don't have any lights on or anything in the greenhouse, obviously it needs to have some form of heat. Now you can use a heat mat, or you can have them indoors, or in my case, I have a little heater in the space where I'm keeping them. So you do need some heat, but as far as they're concerned, they have everything they need without being covered. I want you to think about it this way. And I learned this I won't even necessarily call it a trick, let me call it a technique. I learned this technique, oddly enough, by watching a very old, one of the more original videos on YouTube. And no, unfortunately, I don't know the name of it, or I would refer you to it. It's been quite some time ago that I saw this. But it makes all the sense in the world to me that if this happens in nature, when something goes to seed, let's just take a tomato for example, it goes through its full life cycle, it rots, it drops to the ground, and then new tomatoes will form the following season after it goes through its cold dormancy phase, because they won't germinate in cold temperatures. So if you follow that logic, the next season, all that tomato has done is fallen to the ground and the seeds lie there and wait. This is what happens with most anything that grows. The seeds don't get buried. Somebody doesn't come along and bury them. They don't bury themselves. The seeds merely fall to the ground, and a certain amount of percentage of germination follows. Again, I wouldn't just leave them as I sat them on top. I wouldn't leave them that way. That's why I snugged them in a little bit, so they have good soil contact, good moisture contact, and that way they have a place for the roots to grow. But I don't want you to, I guess part of it is try not to overthink it in gardening. Think of it, by now you may know this of me, since I am a firm believer in the power of God. Think about it the way God designed it. God doesn't bury his seeds. He lets them fall to the ground and they regrow. So at any rate, this is how I choose, or I'm going to do it this way for y'all's thought. I've done it this way many times. So I can tell you without a doubt, it works 100%. Let's not use 100% because no seed germinates 100%. But the process works where you don't need to cover it. Sometimes to me it's a waste of energy and time. Sometimes I don't want to waste the extra seed mix or vermiculite or perlite. It's not really necessary. So I hope this was something that was helpful to you, and I hope that if you're going to be starting your say tomatoes and peppers, something that, especially tomatoes, because you can grow them deeper and deeper because the stalks themselves, the stems, have root hairs on them. And so the deeper you plant tomatoes, the more roots you get and the more vigorous that plant should be. Peppers just take a long time to grow. So I hope that this is something that is appealing to you and that is useful to you and helpful. So I'd like to know your thoughts in the comment section. And until next time, take care and God bless you. Have an amazing day in the Lord.